The hammer struck iron in the darkness before dawn. Sparks scattered like dying stars across the forge floor, illuminating the massive frame of Nathan Cole as he worked metal that glowed white-hot in the coals. 4 in the morning, the same time he woke every day for the past 7 years. The same nightmares, the same ghosts. His hands moved with practiced precision, shaping the iron cross he'd been forging for weeks. A memorial, a marker for graves that lay 1,000 miles east in Kansas soil. Rebecca, Anna, wife and daughter dead 7 years and still haunting every breath he took. The cross was nearly finished now. 8 feet of black iron, elegant despite its weight, destined for the churchyard where he'd plant it and disappear. Wyoming territory stretched vast and indifferent beyond the town of Red Willow, plenty of space for a man to vanish into nothing. He'd done his time pretending to be alive. The cross would be his final act, his admission that Nathan Coleman had died with his family in 1871. And the hollow thing wearing Nathan Cole's name could finally stop moving. The forge fire painted his face in shades of orange and shadow. 31 years old, but the mirror showed someone older. Gray already streaked through dark hair. Scars marked his hands from years of metalwork, burn marks that would never fully heal, like everything else about him. He set the hammer down as footsteps approached through the pre-dawn quiet. Tom Bradley burst through the door, young and eager, at 25, still believing the world made sense. "Nathan, stagecoach, coming into town. Word is there's a mail-order bride arriving for Henry Ashford." Nathan didn't look up from the cooling iron. "Not my concern. Whole town's gathering to watch. Henry's been bragging about his refined Eastern lady for weeks. Henry Ashford is a fool. Everyone knows it." Tom leaned against the door frame, grinning. "Aren't you curious? Woman desperate enough to marry Henry must be something. Desperate, or foolish, or both." Nathan lifted the cross, examining the joints. Perfect. Everything ready. Tomorrow, maybe. Tomorrow he'd plant it and be done. "Heard she's got red hair," Tom added casually. "Henry's mama told half the town it's the devil's mark." Nathan's hammer paused mid-strike. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. A memory. His mother, Ellen Coleman, red hair blazing in Kansas sunlight. The way the neighbors whispered. The way his father grew bitter after she died. The way 12-year-old Nathan learned that beauty could be called corruption if people feared it enough. He forced his hands to move again. Strike, fold, strike. The rhythm that kept him from thinking. "Let them have their spectacle," he said. "I've got work." But even as Tom left, even as Nathan tried to focus on the iron, something pulled at him. An old anger, an old wound. He told himself it was nothing, told himself he'd stay here in the forge where ghosts were the only company he needed. He told himself right up until he set down his tools and walked toward Main Street. The morning sun cut harsh across the prairie as the stagecoach rolled into Red Willow. Dust rose in golden clouds, catching light that seemed too bright, too unforgiving. Nathan stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, face set in the expression he'd perfected over 7 years. Invisible. Unremarkable. Just another town resident watching someone else's life unfold. The coach door opened, and she stepped down into the Wyoming dust. Red hair spilled free from a bonnet that had slipped during travel, catching fire in the morning sun. The color struck Nathan like a physical blow. Exactly the shade his mother's had been. Exactly the color that had marked Ellen Coleman as different, dangerous devil touched in the eyes of small-minded people who needed someone to fear. The woman was younger than he expected. Mid-20s perhaps, wearing a practical navy dress that spoke of eastern cities and careful planning. She held herself straight despite obvious exhaustion, chin up even as the crowd's whispers began. Her eyes swept the gathering with intelligence and wariness in equal measure. Nathan saw the moment she spotted Henry Ashford, the way hope flickered across her face, the way she smiled, tentative and nervous, the way she took a step forward. Henry stood apart from the crowd in his immaculate black suit, older than the woman expected if her expression was any guide. Harder, too. His eyes locked on that red hair, and Nathan saw it happen, saw the calculation, saw the disgust, saw the decision. "No," Henry's voice cut through the morning air. "Absolutely not." The woman froze. "Mr. Ashford, I'm Sarah Blake. We've been corresponding for 6 months. I know who you are." Henry stepped back as if she carried plague. "And you are not the woman I agreed to marry." Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Nathan's jaw tightened. That woman, Henry continued, voice rising with certainty and cruelty, did not mention she bore the devil's mark. The words hit harder than any hammer strike. Nathan watched Sarah Blake sway slightly, watched her fight to stay upright as her future collapsed in dust and sunlight. Her hands trembled, but she kept them steady. Her voice shook, but she forced it clear. My hair is not a deception, Mr. Ashford. It's simply hair. Simple. Henry laughed cold and sharp. Nothing about the devil's work is simple. Red hair is a sign of corruption, of moral rot. I will not have you in my home or my life. The crowd leaned in hungry for humiliation. Nathan saw it in their faces. The same expression Kansas neighbors had worn when they whispered about his mother, when they blamed his father. When they eventually drove his family to the edges of decent society, Sarah Blake bent to lift her trunk and Nathan felt something crack inside his chest. 7 years of careful distance and deliberate isolation. 7 years of telling himself other people's pain wasn't his concern. 7 years of being wrong. His mother's voice echoed across decades. Don't let them make you ashamed of who you are, son. He was moving before thought caught up. His shadow fell across Sarah Blake as she struggled with the trunk. His voice came out lower than intended, rougher with disuse and emotion he'd buried too long. Let me. Strong hands lifted the trunk as if it weighed nothing. Hands scarred from forge work, burnt and calloused, incapable. Sarah Blake looked up, and Nathan met eyes that held too much intelligence to break easily, too much strength to surrender without a fight. My name is Nathan Cole, he said quietly, and you're not standing alone today. The crowd shifted, uncertain now. Nathan Cole was known but not understood. The blacksmith who kept to himself. The man with no past and no future, just present moments of iron and fire. People respected his work. Some feared the darkness they sensed in him. None knew him well enough to predict what he'd do next. Henry Ashford made a sound of pure disgust. You'd best mind yourself, Cole. Taking in damaged goods won't earn you respect. Nathan turned slowly, deliberately. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of years spent choosing silence, making each word matter more. Respect is earned by how a man behaves when the town is watching. The silence that followed felt heavy as heated iron. Henry flushed red, straightening his coat as if dignity could be pressed back into place with enough force. Our arrangement is finished, Henry announced to the crowd, voice pitched for maximum impact. Let this be a lesson. Honesty matters. Sarah Blake found her voice small but steady. I sold everything to come here. I have $17 to my name. That's not my concern. Henry was already turning away, boots sharp against the boardwalk, leaving her standing in the dirt with her life in pieces around her feet. Whispers rose now, sharp ones, curious ones, unkind ones. Nathan didn't wait for them to grow louder. He adjusted the trunk on his shoulder and gestured toward the Prairie Queen Hotel. Come on. Inside the hotel was cool and dim after the harsh sunlight. Mrs. Ada Thornton stood behind the desk, widow's black, making her look severe, gray hair pulled tight as her expression. But her eyes held something softer as she took in Sarah Blake's obvious distress. I saw what happened, Ada said bluntly. You got money for a room. Sarah hesitated, calculating rapidly. A week's worth. That'll do, meals included. After that, you'll figure something out. She will, Nathan said, surprising himself. She's tougher than she looks. Sarah glanced at him, startled by the certainty in his voice. He didn't know where it came from, didn't know why he felt so sure about a woman he'd known for 5 minutes. But something in the way she held herself, the way she'd faced Henry's cruelty, without crumbling, reminded him of strength he'd once known. Reminded him of his mother. He carried the trunk upstairs, set it at the foot of the bed with care, then stepped back, aware of propriety, aware of boundaries, aware that whatever impulse drove him to help, it couldn't extend to impropriety. You should eat, he said. It's been a long day. I couldn't impose. You can. His voice gentled slightly. And you will. Downstairs in the dining room, the smell of beef and fresh bread filled the air. Sarah Blake realized she hadn't eaten since dawn. Nathan pulled out a chair for her, ignoring the stares from other diners, and sat across the small table. As she ate, warmth spread through her for the first time since stepping off that stagecoach. Not just from the food, from the steady presence across from her, from the simple fact of not being alone. Nathan watched her without seeming to watch, noted the careful way she held her fork, the Eastern manners that spoke of education and upbringing, noted the intelligence in her eyes as they swept the room, cataloging details, assessing her situation. This was a woman who thought strategically, a woman who'd survived something before coming here. You came 2,000 miles to marry a man who couldn't see past his own fear, Nathan said, after she'd eaten enough to stop trembling. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice yet. Red Willow has room for people who don't live that small. She met his gaze, then searching for pity, finding none. Finding instead something that looked like recognition, like he knew exactly what it felt like to be judged for things beyond your control. Why did you help me? The question emerged softer than intended. Nathan paused, considering. The forge had taught him precision. Every word mattered when you spoke so few. My mother had hair like yours. People said ugly things to her, too. She taught me early that fear likes to dress itself up as righteousness. Sarah felt tears sting, but refused to let them fall. She sounds strong. She was, past tense. Sarah heard volumes in that single word. They sat in companionable silence for a few moments, the dining room settling into afternoon quiet around them. Finally, Sarah straightened, pulling herself together with visible effort. I need work, soon. I can keep books. I managed my father's accounts before he passed. Nathan's expression shifted slightly. Interest flickered in those sage green eyes. You can handle ledgers? Yes. She said it carefully, sensing an opportunity, but not wanting to seem desperate despite being exactly that. That's fortunate. The ghost of a smile touched his mouth. I'm terrible with figures. What do you do? I run the blacksmith shop at the edge of town. Horseshoe's wagon repairs tools, keeps me busy. He shrugged, but my records are a disaster. Sarah's heart gave a cautious lift. You'd consider hiring me? I was hoping you'd say yes. Pay won't be much at first. Enough for your room and meals, maybe a little extra. Nathan leaned forward slightly. Honest work, no questions asked. She studied his face, searching for ulterior motives and finding only sincerity. Finding a man who seemed as uncomfortable with kindness as she was with accepting it. I'd like that very much. Good. Tomorrow morning, then. I'll walk you over. He started to rise, then paused. Won't that cause trouble with Mr. Ashford? Nathan's expression hardened just slightly. Let him choke on it. A man doesn't get to humiliate someone in public and then dictate their future. Something settled inside Sarah, a quiet strength she hadn't known she still possessed. When Nathan stood to leave, he stopped beside her chair. Red Willow isn't always kind, but it remembers who stands when it matters. After he left, Sarah sat alone with her cooling coffee. This morning she'd arrived as a bride. Now she was a woman without a husband, without certainty, but somehow not without hope. Tomorrow she'd walk into a forge filled with fire and iron and begin again. The knock came at 7 sharp. Sarah had been awake since 5, too nervous to sleep, too uncertain to relax. She'd chosen a plain brown wool dress, pinned her hair into a severe bun that dulled its brightness. When she studied her reflection, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the hopeful bride. In her place stood someone quieter, harder wary. Nathan waited downstairs, clean shirt and dark trousers, the same work-worn hands. The dining room fell silent as she entered, but he seemed not to notice. Or perhaps he noticed and simply didn't care. He greeted her with a nod, and they walked together through the waking town. Shopkeepers swept stoops. Horses stamped patient hooves. Nathan greeted people by name, introducing her simply. Miss Blake, my new bookkeeper. No explanations, no apologies. Just fact delivered with quiet authority. The blacksmith shop stood at the edge of town, a wide barn of weathered wood and stone. The smell hit her first. Coal and iron and heat, something ancient and alive. Inside, the forge glowed like a living heart. Tools lined the walls in organized chaos. Metal lay waiting in all stages of becoming something useful. This is it, Nathan said. Not pretty, but it gets the job done. It's impressive, Sarah replied honestly. He led her to a small back room and she stopped short. Paper covered every surface. Receipts, invoices, notes stuffed into boxes and corners. Dust and disorder ruled completely. I warned you, Nathan said, rubbing the back of his neck with something like embarrassment. Sarah rolled up her sleeves. I'll need a ledger, ink, and a broom. Relief crossed his face. Take all you need. Hours passed unnoticed. Sarah sorted stacked labeled. Chaos slowly surrendered to order, and she felt herself breathe again. Numbers were steady, dependable, honest. From the forge came the rhythmic sound of hammer on iron, each strike somehow grounding her further. Then she found a name that made her pause. Mr. Cole? She stepped into the main room where Nathan was shaping a horseshoe. Henry Ashford owes you $50. Wagon repair. 3 months overdue. The hammer paused mid-strike. He usually pays. Usually isn't a system. I should send an invoice. Nathan appeared in the doorway, studying her with new eyes. You don't hesitate, do you? Not anymore. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to explore. Nathan nodded slowly. Send the invoice. Over the next 3 days, they fell into a rhythm. Sarah arrived at 7, worked until 6. Nathan forged in the main room, the sound of his hammer, a constant backdrop. They spoke little, but the silence felt comfortable. Two people who understood that words could wait until they meant something. On the 4th day, as Sarah organized a particularly chaotic stack of supply orders, Nathan appeared in the doorway with 2 tin cups of coffee. Break time, he said simply. They sat on the bench outside the forge, watching red willows settle into evening. The sun painted the prairie gold and amber. Sarah accepted the coffee, gratefully surprised by the gesture. You're good at this, Nathan said after a moment. The bookkeeping, better than I expected. My father ran a shipping business in Boston. Sarah said, the words coming easier than she'd anticipated. When he died 6 months ago, I discovered he'd been embezzling to cover gambling debts. The creditors came for everything. I sold what little remained and saw the mail-order bride advertisement. She paused. I thought it was an honorable escape. Turns out I was running from one kind of shame into another. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. We're both good at running, seems like. Were, Sarah corrected softly. Past tense. Were, Nathan agreed. He looked at her directly. I came here 7 years ago running from Kansas. From whispers and guilt I didn't earn but carried anyway. Thought if I got far enough away, the ghost would stop following. He took a sip of coffee. They followed anyway. What happened in Kansas? Nathan's jaw tightened. For a moment, Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. Then the words came slow and deliberate. I had a wife, Rebecca, a daughter, Anna. She was 6 months old. His voice stayed level, but his eyes held old pain. Summer of 1871 sickness came through. The doctor said cholera. They died 3 days apart. I'm so sorry, Sarah whispered. The town whispered after. Blamed me. Said I'd poisoned them for insurance money. No proof, just talk, but talk is enough in a small town. He set down his cup. I sold everything and ran. Changed my name from Coleman to Cole. Came here to disappear. Sarah reached out, placed her hand over his scarred knuckles. You didn't disappear. No, Nathan admitted. Turns out that's harder than it looks. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower. Finally, Nathan spoke again. Henry Ashford came by while you were at the hotel yesterday. Threatened to call in everyone's debts if I didn't fire you. Sarah's hand tensed. What did you say? That he could try. Nathan's mouth quirked slightly. Tom Bradley was here. Told Henry that half of the ranchers would pull their business if he pressured me. Henry left pretty quickly after that. I'm causing you trouble, Richard. You're causing Henry trouble. There's a difference, Moifin. Nathan stood, offered her his hand. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her to the back corner of the forge where the iron cross stood gleaming dully in the fading light. Sarah traced the intricate joints with her fingers. It's beautiful. What's it for? A memorial. For Rebecca and Anna. Nathan's voice was quiet. I was going to plant it in the churchyard and then leave. Figured that would be the end of it. And now, Nathan looked at her, really looked at her. Now I'm thinking maybe endings aren't the only option. Before he could respond, a shadow fell across the entrance. Henry Ashford stood there, face flushed with fury, morning sunlight harsh behind him. How dare you? He hissed. Nathan straightened slowly. Sarah stood beside him, and Red Willow held its breath. Henry's eyes swept the shop, taking in the forge, the ledgers finally standing beside Nathan. His mouth twisted. So it's true. You've taken her in right under my nose. Nathan's voice stayed calm. You rejected her publicly. What she does now isn't your concern. My concern, Henry laughed sharply. She's made me a laughingstock. Sarah stepped forward before Nathan could answer. Her voice emerged steady, though her heart raced. Mr. Ashford, you owe this shop $50. I'll be sending a formal invoice today. Payment is due within 2 weeks. Color drained from his face. You can't do that. I can, and I will. Henry turned his glare on Nathan. You're enjoying this, turning the town against me. Nathan set down his hammer with deliberate care. The town makes up its own mind. Always has. For a long moment, Henry looked as though he might explode. Then he spun and stormed out, boots striking dirt hard enough to echo. Sarah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You didn't make things worse, Nathan said quietly. You made them honest. That evening, as Sarah organized the last of the ledgers, Nathan worked late at the forge. The iron cross was finished now, waiting in the corner. Tomorrow he'd meant to plant it. Tomorrow he'd meant to disappear. But today he'd stood up for someone. Today he'd felt something other than numbness. Today a red-haired woman with $17 and no future had somehow reminded him that life could be more than waiting for permission to stop breathing. He looked at the cross, looked at Sarah bent over account books creating order from his chaos, looked at his own scarred hands that knew how to shape iron but had forgotten how to shape a life. Tomorrow could wait. The decision was taken from him 2 days later when the rider arrived. U.S. Marshal Clayton Pierce, 55, and weathered badge glinting in afternoon sun. He dismounted outside the forge, and Nathan's blood ran cold. 7 years. 7 years of running, and now it caught up. Nathan Coleman, the marshal said, not a question. Nathan set down his hammer carefully. What do you want? Information about Kansas, about 1871. I didn't kill my wife and daughter. The words came automatic, a defense worn smooth with repetition. Marshal Pierce's expression shifted. I know that's not why I'm here. Nathan's world tilted. What? The marshal stepped inside, glancing at Sarah, who'd emerged from the back room. This concerns him. She should hear it too. Hear what? Nathan's voice came rough. I'm investigating Gerald Ashford, Kansas banker, your former neighbor. Pierce pulled papers from his saddlebag. There's a pattern. 7 towns, 43 deaths, all blamed on family members. All properties seized by Ashford banking. When the forge suddenly felt too hot, Nathan gripped the anvil for support. Rebecca and Anna weren't the first, won't be the last unless we stop him. Pierce laid out documents, water contamination reports, death certificates, land transfers, a conspiracy mapped in paper and ink and blood. Gerald Ashford's company wanted railroad routes through Kansas. Property values were too high, so they contaminated water supplies, blamed the deaths on cholera. While families mourned and fought amongst themselves, Ashford Banking bought land for pennies. Sarah made a sound of horror. Nathan couldn't speak. Your wife and daughter were murdered for $300 worth of creekfront property. Pierce continued relentlessly. The doctor was paid to misdiagnose. The neighbors were encouraged to suspect you. And while you ran ashamed and guilty, Gerald Ashford took your land and sold it to the railroad for $6,000. Nathan's knees buckled. He sat hard on a stool, head in hands. 7 years. 7 years of guilt. 7 years of believing he'd failed to protect them. 7 years of running from a crime that was never his. I need your testimony, Pierce said gently, about the timing, the water, the doctor's behavior, Gerald's attempts to buy your land before the deaths. Your story helps convict a mass murderer. Why now? Nathan's voice cracked. Why tell me now? Because we finally have enough evidence to move. Because Gerald knows we're coming and he's getting desperate. Pierce paused. And because you deserve to know the truth. Sarah crossed to Nathan, placed a hand on his shoulder. Steady, grounding. What do you need him to do? Testify publicly at a town meeting here in Red Willow. Pierce's expression hardened. There's one complication. Gerald's brother Henry lives here. They've been running the same scheme, railroad investment fraud. Henry's been using his bank to pressure merchants into bad deals. Nathan's head snapped up. Henry Ashford, Gerald's younger brother. We believe Henry's involved in at least the Red Willow scheme, possibly more. Pierce pulled out ledgers. Do you have access to any of Henry's financial records? Sarah and Nathan exchanged looks. We might, Sarah said slowly. She disappeared into the back room, returned with Henry's outstanding invoices. The ones she'd been organizing. The ones that showed patterns of payments from someone with initials G.A. Gerald Ashford. The pieces fell into place like iron in a forge. Henry hadn't just rejected Sarah for superstitious cruelty. He'd rejected her because he was desperate, because his brother's schemes were unraveling, because he couldn't afford the scrutiny a wife would bring. And he'd known who Nathan was all along, had recognized Nathan Coleman despite the name change, had kept silent, perhaps hoping to use it as leverage someday. We have a town meeting in 4 days, Nathan said, voice steady now. Resolved. We'll expose everything. Pierce nodded. Be ready when cornered men like the Ashfords get dangerous. That night, Nathan told Sarah everything. His real name, Rebecca and Anna, the whispers and the guilt, and the 7 years of running from shame that was never his to carry. He told her about his mother, about the pattern of fear disguised as righteousness that had marked his whole life. She listened without judgment. When he finished, she simply said, "Then we fight back. This puts you in danger." I was in danger the moment I stepped off that stagecoach with red hair. Sarah's jaw set firm. We expose them together, for Rebecca, for Anna, for everyone they've hurt. Nathan looked at her in the lamplight, this woman he barely knew, who somehow understood him better than people he'd known for years. Why are you doing this? Because you stood up for me when no one else would. Because justice matters. She paused. And because running from things that aren't your fault is exhausting. I know. I've been doing it too. They worked through the night organizing evidence. Sarah's ledger showing Henry's debts, Nathan's testimony about Kansas, letters from Gerald to Henry hidden in old invoice files discussing opportunities and profitable arrangements. Tom Bradley arrived at dawn having heard rumors. Nathan told him the truth. Tom's response was immediate. You've got my rifle and my word. That woman is under our protection now. Nathan questioned. You think I'm letting you face Ashford alone? That bastard owes me $800. This is personal for all of us. Others came throughout the day. Ada Thornton, Reverend Clark, Mrs. Eleanor Preston, working-class families who'd been pressured by Henry's bank. The town divided along lines of loyalty and fear, but a core group rallied around Nathan and Sarah. The night before the town meeting, Nathan received a letter, slipped under the forged door. Gerald Ashford's handwriting unmistakable from the documents Pierce had shown. Drop the testimony or the woman pays. You know what I'm capable of. Nathan's hands shook as he read it, exactly what Gerald had done in Kansas. Threatened families before poisoning them. History repeating in neat, terrible circles. He found Sarah at the hotel, showed her the letter. We're not backing down, she said immediately. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Her eyes blazed. The moment you stood up for me, it became my fight too. They argued. Nathan's fear for her safety against Sarah's determination for justice. Finally, she grabbed his shoulders, forced him to meet her eyes. Don't you dare protect me by surrendering. Don't you dare let him win because you're afraid of losing someone again. We fight. Together. Nathan pulled her close, almost kissed her, stopped himself. I can't lose someone again. Then don't lose. Fight. Win. And I'll be right there with you. The town meeting filled Red Willow's community hall past capacity. 250 people packed inside, overflow crowding the doorway. Marshal Pierce stood with his deputies. Henry Ashford sat in front with his lawyers confident. Gerald Ashford sat in back smiling. Nathan's hands were steady as he stood. All eyes turned to him. He removed his hat. My name is Nathan Coleman. The words dropped like stones in still water. 7 years ago, I lived in Kansas. I had a wife, Rebecca, a daughter, Anna, 6 months old. In July 1871, sickness came. The doctor said, cholera. My wife died July 14th. My daughter died July 16th. His voice didn't shake. He'd practiced this, lived this, Survive this. I buried them in ground I'd tilled to feed them. The next day, whispers started. Poison, insurance money, murder. I didn't stay to defend myself. I was ashamed, guilty, not of their deaths, but of failing to protect them. I ran. Changed my name. Came to Wyoming to die quietly. He paused. The hall was silent as snowfall. But I didn't kill them. Gerald Ashford did. Nathan pointed to the back row. Every head turned. That man owns Ashford Banking. His company wanted railroad land. Property values were too high, so he contaminated water supplies. 14 people died in my town alone, 43 across 7 Kansas communities. Families blamed each other while Gerald bought land cheap and sold it high. Marshall Pierce stood, presented evidence. Doctor's confession, water tests, land purchase records, a conspiracy mapped in terrible detail. Sarah stood next, her voice clear and strong, presenting Henry's ledgers. The payments from Gerald, the notation about Kansas parcels, the proof that Henry knew profited, helped his brother murder for money. The crowd erupted. Shouts, anger, horror. Gerald stood arrogant to the end. You have no proof I personally ordered anything. Legitimate business investments. Nathan pulled out letters, old, worn, kept all these years. These are your company's offers to buy my land. January 1871, $200, I refused. March 400, I refused. June 600, with a threat that circumstances may change property values soon. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. July 14th, my wife died. July 16th, my daughter. July 20th, your company bought my land from the county for $150 in unpaid taxes. You didn't just kill them for profit. You killed them because I said no. The crowd surged forward. Marshall's deputies struggled to maintain order. Gerald pulled a gun. Bad mistake. The shot went wild as Tom Bradley tackled him. Nathan dove, returned fire hit Gerald's shoulder. Deputies swarmed. Gerald Ashford was dragged away in chains, screaming threats and denials. Henry tried to flee. The crowd blocked him. Mayor demanded resignation. Bank license revoked. Assets frozen. Marshall arrested him as accessory to murder. Henry broke sobbing. I didn't know he'd kill people. I thought it was just business. You took blood money, someone shouted. The hall erupted in judgment. When order finally restored, Nathan stood hand bleeding from a graze. Sarah rushed to him. You're hurt. I'm alive. He looked at her. That's what matters. The crowd erupted in applause. Nathan Cole revealed as Nathan Coleman, vindicated after 7 years of running. The town that had watched Sarah Blake be publicly humiliated now watched justice served. Reverend Clark spoke into the settling quiet. This town owes you an apology, Mr. Coleman. Nathan shook his head. I go by Cole now. That man died with his family. I'm someone new. Sarah took his hand. Someone better. Outside stars emerged over Wyoming. The iron cross still waited in the forge unplanted. Nathan looked at it that night, looked at Sarah organizing evidence for the trial, looked at his own reflection in darkened window glass. He'd come to Red Willow to end his story. Instead, somehow, he'd started a new one. The cross could wait. Life, it seemed, still had use for Nathan Cole. Tomorrow they'd begin again. Together, and for the first time in 7 years, tomorrow felt like possibility instead of burden. The week after the town meeting passed in a blur of legal proceedings and whispered conversations. Gerald and Henry Ashford sat in Cheyenne jail awaiting trial, but their absence left Red Willow changed. The air felt different, lighter somehow, as if a weight the town hadn't known it carried had finally lifted. Nathan's real name spread through every household. Nathan Coleman, not Cole, the man who'd lost everything in Kansas and rebuilt himself from ashes. People looked at him differently now, not with suspicion or distance, but with something closer to reverence. He hated it. They're treating me like a hero, he told Tom one evening at the forge. I just told the truth. You faced down a murderer in front of the whole town, Tom replied. Armed murderer, I might add. You took a bullet for justice. That's hero territory. Nathan touched the bandage on his hand where Gerald's wild shot had grazed him. I took a graze, hardly heroic. Tell that to the 15 families who won't lose their homes now that Henry's fraud scheme is exposed. Tom clapped him on the shoulder. Accept it, brother. You're stuck being respected. What Nathan couldn't accept, what kept him awake more than nightmares now, was how Sarah Blake had become woven into every aspect of his daily life. She arrived at the forge each morning at 7 sharp, organized his chaos into systems that actually worked, charm customers with efficiency and genuine warmth. Orders doubled within days, not just because of her bookkeeping, though that helped, because people trusted her, trusted them together. It was the together part that unsettled him. Sunday morning found Nathan dressed in his only suit, uncomfortable but determined. He knocked on Sarah's hotel room door with hands that hadn't trembled in a forge fire, but shook now like green wooden flame. She opened the door in a simple gray dress, hair pinned up but gleaming copper in the morning light. Something in her expression softened when she saw him. "Mr. Cole, this is unexpected." "Nathan," he corrected, "and I was hoping. That is, if you're not opposed. I'd like to call on you, properly." The smile that crossed her face made his chest tight. "You're asking permission to court me?" "Yes, if you'd consider." "I would." Nathan Coleman. She said his real name deliberately. "Or should I say Cole?" "Cole, that's who I am now. Coleman died in Kansas." "Then Nathan Cole may certainly call on me, though we've been working together for a week already." "That's business. This is—" He paused, searching for words. "Different." "Yes," Sarah agreed softly. "It is." They walked to church together through autumn morning that smelled of coming winter. Leaves scattered gold and red across the street. People nodded greetings with new warmth. Mrs. Ada Thornton smiled knowingly from the hotel porch. Reverend Clark welcomed them with barely concealed approval. Sitting beside Sarah in the wooden pew, Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in 7 years. Not quite peace, not yet, but the possibility of peace. The shape of a future that didn't end with an iron cross and disappearance. After the service, Mrs. Eleanor Preston approached with her husband, the doctor in tow. "Miss Blake, I'm organizing the Ladies' Aid Society meeting for Thursday. I do hope you'll join us." Sarah glanced at Nathan, uncertain. He nodded encouragement. "I'd be honored, Mrs. Preston." "Excellent. And Mr. Cole, the town council meets Tuesday. We'd like you in attendance. We're discussing winter preparations." Nathan started to decline, but Tom appeared at his elbow. "He'll be there. Won't you, Nathan?" The look Tom gave him said this wasn't optional. Nathan was being drafted into community leadership whether he wanted it or not. That evening, walking Sarah back to the hotel after Sunday dinner, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Why did you really help me that first day? The truth, Nathan." He was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunset paint Wyoming sky in shades of fire. Finally, he spoke. "I watched my mother die when I was 12. Red hair like yours. The town treated her like she was cursed. Whispered about her. Excluded her. My father grew bitter. Blamed her for how people treated us. When she died in childbirth, part of him was relieved. I saw it in his face. Relief that he wouldn't have to defend her anymore." Sarah's hand found his. "When Henry rejected you," Nathan continued, "when the crowd leaned in hungry for your humiliation, I saw my mother standing alone. I saw Rebecca in our Kansas yard when neighbors whispered. I saw every woman who ever stood alone against cruelty." He looked at her directly. "I helped you because failing to help would have meant becoming my father. And I swore I'd never be that kind of man. Thank you for telling me." Sarah squeezed his hand. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you're nothing like your father." "So am I." The courtship proceeded with proper slowness. Sunday dinners, evening walks, church attendance together, always chaperoned by Ada or Mrs. Preston, or simply the watchful eyes of a small town. Nathan brought no flowers or poetry. He was 31, not 19. He courted Sarah with honesty instead. Showed her his scars, literal and otherwise, and waited to see if she'd flinch. She never did. The temperature dropped sharply in late October, earlier than normal. Old Jeremiah, a trapper who'd lived in Wyoming territory for 50 years, rode into town with a warning that sent chills through the community. "Worst winter in my lifetime coming," he announced at the general store, voice carrying to the gathered crowd. "Felt it in my bones. Seen the signs. Birds flying south 2 weeks early. Squirrels storing triple rations. Sky's got that look." "What look?" someone asked. "The look that says, get ready to fight for your life." The town council met that night in emergency session. Nathan sat beside Tom, uncomfortable with his new role, but unable to deny the necessity. Mayor William Thornton, Ada's husband, presided with grim efficiency. Jeremiah's predictions have been right for 30 years, Mayor Thornton said. We'd be fools to ignore him. We need to inventory supplies and prepare for extended isolation. Sarah raised her hand, one of only two women in attendance. I can help with inventory. Create a tracking system for food fuel medicine. The railroad camp outside town has 40 workers, a merchant pointed out. Do we include them in our calculations? They're human beings, Nathan said quietly. We include them. Arguments erupted. Some merchants protested. Not enough supplies for outsiders. Have to protect our own families first. The debate grew heated until Nathan stood, and something in his stillness made everyone stop talking. 7 years ago, my wife and daughter died because a powerful man decided some people mattered less than others. I won't watch this town make the same choice. His voice was steady, implacable. We share what we have. All of us survive or we deal with the consequences together. The vote was close, 12-8 in favor of including railroad workers in winter planning. Nathan noted who voted which way. This would matter later. Over the next 2 weeks, Red Willow transformed into a fortress against coming cold. Nathan's forge ran 18-hour days producing tools, nails, hinges. Sarah created intricate spreadsheets tracking every ounce of food and fuel. Tom organized hunting parties to stock meat. Women preserved vegetables and dried herbs. Working late one evening, Sarah suddenly stood from her desk and swayed. Nathan caught her before she could fall. When did you last eat? He demanded. This morning, I think. There's too much to do. There's always too much to do, Dishi. You still have to eat. He guided her to a chair, brought bread and cheese from his own meager supplies. Watched as color returned slowly to her face. I'm fine, she protested. You're exhausted. We both are. Nathan crouched beside her chair. Sarah, this preparation matters, but you matter more. Something in her expression shifted, softened and sharpened simultaneously. Nathan, there's something I need to tell you. The first snow fell that night. Not the gentle drift of early winter, but a wall of white that erased the world beyond 10 feet. Temperature plummeted to 15 below zero. Wind howled like wounded animals. The blizzard Jeremiah predicted had arrived. Nathan opened the forge to anyone needing warmth. 30 people took shelter that first night. Railroad workers, families from outlying cabins, the elderly and vulnerable. Sarah organized sleeping spaces with ruthless efficiency. Nathan kept the fire burning around the clock, feeding coal, with hands that never stopped moving. On the second day, Tom arrived with the Baker family. Young Martha Baker, 22 and recently widowed, carried a 3-year-old and an infant. Her husband had died trying to save their cabin when it collapsed under snow weight. The infant's lips were blue, breathing shallow. Mrs. Preston examined her quickly. Hypothermia, severe. We need to warm her fast but carefully. Nathan didn't think. Stripped his shirt and held the baby against his bare chest, sitting close to the forge. Skin-to-skin warmth. The same technique that had saved others before. He sat there for 6 hours not moving while the baby gradually pinked and her breathing steadied. Sarah watched him hold that child with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with his scarred hands and hard face. Watched him fight ghosts visible only to him. When the baby finally cried healthy and strong, Nathan's eyes closed briefly in relief so profound it bordered on pain. Later, when the blizzard paused and most people slept, Sarah found him alone by the cooling forge. That wasn't just about saving a baby, was it? Nathan shook his head. I was 6 months old, same age. When I held that child today, for a moment I was back in Kansas. For a moment I could save my daughter. His voice cracked. I know that's not rational. Grief isn't rational. Sarah sat beside him. Neither is courage. You sat there for 6 hours because a baby needed you. That matters, Nathan. That changes things. Not enough. I couldn't save Anna, couldn't save Rebecca. But you saved Martha Baker's daughter today. You saved 30 people by opening this forge. You saved me when I stepped off that stagecoach. She took his hand. You can't undo the past. None of us can. But you're here now, present, fighting. That's what matters. The blizzard lasted 3 days. When it finally broke, the town emerged to assess damage. 4 cabins destroyed, 2 elderly residents dead frozen before help could reach them. Supplies depleted faster than expected with so many sheltering together. And the supply wagon that was supposed to arrive on November 10th never came. The pass was blocked. No supplies until late December at earliest. Sarah ran the calculations 3 times, hoping for different results. Finally, she brought the ledger to Nathan. We have 3 weeks of food at current rations. 5 weeks until the next possible resupply. That's 14 days of starvation if nothing changes. The town council met again. Arguments erupted immediately. Reduce rations by 40%. Expel the railroad workers. Send an expedition to Fort Collins 80 miles through blizzard country, a suicide mission that might bring supplies. The vote for expedition won by narrow margin. Tom Bradley volunteered to lead. Nathan stood. No, I will. Nathan, Sarah started. I'm the best tracker, best shot, best chance of making it there and back. He looked at her. The town needs you here organizing. They need me out there getting supplies. They argued privately in the forge office, voices rising with fear disguised as anger. You're running again, Sarah accused. When things get hard, you leave. I'm fighting, there's a difference. By abandoning everyone who depends on you. By getting them what they need to survive. Nathan's control cracked. What would you have me do? Sarah, sit here and watch people starve. I'd have you trust someone else to go. Trust that you don't have to save everyone personally. I couldn't save Rebecca and Anna. Maybe I can save this town. Sarah went very still. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet and sharp as broken glass. If you go, you need to know something. What? I'm pregnant. The world stopped. Actually stopped. Nathan's heart, his breath, his thoughts all frozen in a moment that stretched and compressed simultaneously. What? 6 weeks. Mrs. Preston confirmed it this morning. Sarah's hands trembled. We've been courting for 6 weeks. We've been close. Close enough. Nathan sat down hard, the words still echoing. A baby. Their baby. We're not married, he said finally, voice rough. I'm aware. Sarah's chin lifted in that way he'd come to recognize. Defensive but determined. Does that change anything? Nathan looked at her, this woman who'd become essential without him noticing. Everything. Nothing. I don't know. He shook his head. Sarah, I failed my first child. What if I failed this one? Then we failed together. But Nathan, if you go on this expedition, you need to understand. You're not just risking your life. You're risking leaving me alone with a baby. Leaving our child without a father before they're even born. The weight of it crushed him. Responsibility for an entire town versus responsibility for this woman, this child. How did a man choose, I have to go, he said finally. But I swear on our child's life, I'll come back. You better. Because if you die out there and leave me alone, I'll never forgive you. He crossed to her, cupped her face in his scarred hands. I love you, Sarah. First time he'd said it since Rebecca. The words felt rusty and new and terrifying and right. I love you too, you stubborn fool. They left at dawn. Nathan called Bradley Craig, the young railroad worker, Pete, another railroad man, Sam, a rancher, and Lucas, the merchant's son. 6 men on snowshoes carrying sleds and rifles heading into weather that could kill them in 100 ways. The first 3 days were brutal. 25 below zero, snow waist deep, 10 miles a day if they were lucky. Nights spent huddled together, rotating watch, keeping each other alive through sheer, stubborn will. Around the fire on the second night, Jake asked the question others were thinking. Why are you doing this, Nathan? You don't owe us nothing. Nathan stared into flames that reminded him of his forge. I brought railroad workers into town, made them my responsibility. Could have let the council vote them out, Pete said. Could have, didn't. Nathan's jaw set. Spent 7 years running from responsibility. I'm done running. Heard you lost family in Kansas, Sam offered quietly. Nathan nodded. Wife and daughter, long time ago. Got that Blake woman now, though. Heard she's expecting. The words hurt and healed simultaneously. She is. That's why I have to make it back. We'll get you back, boss, Lucas said. All of us or none of us. On day 4, crossing a mountain ridge, the rumble started. Low and ominous. Avalanche. Run. They scattered, but Lucas wasn't fast enough. Snow buried him a white wall that swallowed him whole. They dug frantically 20 minutes of terror and frozen hands and pleased God, not him, until they found Lucas blue and still. Nathan performed rescue breathing technique learned in Army days he rarely mentioned. Breathed for Lucas when Lucas couldn't breathe for himself. Counted compressions. Breathed again. Refused to accept death. Lucas coughed. Vomited snow. Lived. They rested an hour, then kept moving. No choice. Stop meant freezing. Fort Collins appeared on day 6 like a mirage. They staggered in half dead from exhaustion. The fort commander took one look and shook his head. You came 80 miles in this weather. You're either insane or desperate. Both, Nathan managed. They loaded sleds with 300 pounds of supplies, food, medicine, blankets, rested 24 hours and started back. Nathan barely slept. Nightmares of Sarah alone. Sarah giving birth without him. Sarah dying like Rebecca. The return journey was worse. Storm intensified. Temperature dropped to 35 below. On day 8, Pete's foot developed frostbite. He couldn't walk. The sleds were too heavy to pull with an injured man. Math was brutal and simple. Supplies or man. Not both. Leave me, Pete said through chattering teeth. Take the supplies. Nathan's response was immediate and absolute. No. Nathan, if we slow down, we all freeze, Tom argued. He's right. We're not leaving anyone. Nathan's voice carried the weight of Kansas graves and promises made to a red-haired woman. Redistribute the weight. Tom, Sam, you pull sleds. Jake and I carry Pete in shifts. We'll never make 40 miles like that. Then we die trying. No one gets left behind. They managed 5 miles a day, agonizingly slow. Food ran low even as they carried food. The irony wasn't lost on Nathan. On day 10, he collapsed from exhaustion. We have to rest, Tom insisted. No time. Sarah's waiting. Town's starving. Move. Sheer will kept them going. Will and stubbornness and the knowledge that surrender meant death for everyone. On day 11, 10 miles from Red Willow, they heard bells. Rescue party. Led by Sarah on horseback despite her pregnancy, bundled in furs, face set with determination. You idiot, she said when she reached Nathan. You beautiful idiot. Told you I'd come back. He collapsed into her arms. Nathan woke 3 days later in his own bed above the forge. Sarah sat beside him, face etched with exhaustion and relief. The room was dim, afternoon light filtering through the frost-covered windows. His body felt like it had been beaten with his own hammer. How long? His voice came out as gravel. 3 days. You scared me half to death. The supplies. Safe, distributed. Everyone's eating again. She touched his face gently, fingers cool against his fevered skin. Pete lost 3 toes, but he's alive. Lucas has pneumonia, but recovering. Everyone made it back because you wouldn't leave anyone behind. Nathan closed his eyes, letting relief wash through him. Brotherhood means something. Has to. It does, and so does keeping promises to pregnant women. Sarah's voice held equal parts anger and affection. Don't ever do that to me again. What saved the town? Almost die doing it. Her hand moved to her belly, still flat, but holding their future. You have responsibilities now, to me, to this child, to yourself. Nathan caught her hand, held it against his chest where his heart beat steady and sure. Never again by choice. I promise, tomorrow. Over the next few days, as Nathan recovered, the town gathered outside the forge. Hymns drifted through windows. Prayers offered. When he finally appeared at the window, weak but standing, the roar of approval made him uncomfortable as always. But he accepted it now, understanding that sometimes being uncomfortable was part of living instead of just surviving. The supplies he'd brought lasted until the scheduled December resupply. Red Willow survived the worst winter in 50 years with only 3 deaths, a miracle by frontier standards. The experience bound the community together in ways that prosperity never could. Suffering shared became strength earned. Christmas Eve found the town transformed. Snow lay heavy but beautiful now, coating everything in white peace. The forge glowed, warm doors open to neighbors who came and went freely. Nathan had been planning something for weeks, working on it in secret hours when Sarah was at the hotel or occupied with inventory. An iron rose. Not just a flower, but an entire vine petal shaped with precision that took his breath, thorns detailed and true, the whole thing twisting with an artistry he rarely allowed himself. Beauty from harsh materials, love forged in fire and tempered by time. After the Christmas service, before the congregation dispersed, Nathan stood. The church went silent instantly. People had learned that when Nathan Cole spoke, it mattered. "Folks, I need a moment." Sarah looked confused until he gestured for her to join him at the front. She walked forward, slowly, uncertain, one hand protective over her belly where their child grew. Nathan knelt. Traditional, proper, earned through 3 months of courtship and a lifetime of learning what love actually meant. Sarah Blake. 3 months ago, I learned I'm going to be a father again. Terrified me. Still does. I lost my first family and don't know if I deserve a second chance. His voice carried to every corner of the church, steady and sure. But you taught me the past doesn't define the future. That shame can become strength. That running accomplishes nothing. I knelt like this once before in Kansas, young and foolish, thinking love meant protecting someone from the world. I failed. He paused, composing himself, seeing Rebecca's face and releasing it with love instead of guilt. I kneel now, older, hopefully, wiser, knowing love means standing beside someone as they protect themselves. Sarah, you don't need me to save you. You save yourself every day. But I'd like to be there while you do it. I'd like to raise our child together. Build a life where we face everything side by side. He held up the iron rose firelight catching on polished metal. Will you marry me? Sarah's tears caught lamplight. You don't fail people, Nathan Coleman. You carry them when they can't walk. You bring them food when they're starving. You stand up when everyone else sits down. And yes, I'll marry you. The church erupted. Even stern Ada Thornton cried. Nathan stood, placed the rose in Sarah's hands. Made this for you. Real roses, da. Iron lasts. It's beautiful. You're incredible. I'm really not. To me, you are. Their first real kiss brought the house down. Reverend Clark laughed, wiping his eyes. Well, I suppose I should schedule a wedding. Soon, Nathan said, before she changes her mind. Never, Sarah promised. That night, as celebration continued, a rider arrived through the snow. Urgent telegram from Cheyenne clutched in frozen hands. Marshall Pierce's handwriting was that made Nathan's blood run cold. Gerald Ashford escaped during prison transfer 3 days ago. Whereabouts unknown. Considered armed and dangerous. Has sworn revenge against Nathan Coleman and all he loves. Exercise extreme caution. The telegram trembled in Nathan's hands as he read it again. 3 days. Gerald Ashford had been free for 3 days and nobody thought to warn Red Willow until now. 3 days for a murderer who'd sworn revenge to get within striking distance of everything Nathan had finally allowed himself to care about. Sarah stood beside him in the forge, one hand protective over her belly where their child grew. 4 months along now, starting to show. A target painted in the curve of her body. We need to leave, Nathan said immediately. Tonight, get you somewhere safe. Where safe he found you across 1,000 miles last time. Sarah's voice stayed steady even as her face paled. Running didn't work before. Why would it work now? Tom Bradley arrived within the hour, rifle in hand, and 3 other ranchers behind him. Word spread fast in Red Willow, especially bad word. Heard the news. We're setting up watch rotations. Nobody gets to Sarah without going through us first. Nathan gripped Tom's shoulder, words inadequate for what he felt. Thank you. Brothers don't let brothers face killers alone. Tom's jaw set firm. Besides, that bastard owes me $800. This is personal now. They turned the forge into a fortress. Boarded windows where sight lines existed. Set guards at all approaches. Sarah moved into Nathan's quarters, upstairs propriety, abandoned in favor of protection. Nathan slept armed when he slept at all. Mostly he worked through the night, hammer striking iron, the rhythm keeping panic at bay. Days crawled past like wounded things. No sign of Gerald. No word from Marshall Pierce. The waiting was its own torture, worse than any blizzard. Nathan watched shadows, jumped at sounds, saw threats in every stranger's face. Sarah organized their defenses with the same efficiency she brought to Ledger's, but Nathan saw the strain around her eyes, the way her hand drifted to her belly when she thought he wasn't looking. This is no way to live, she said on the 5th night. They sat by the forge fire guards outside the world, reduced to this small circle of warmth and worry. It's temporary. Was it, or is this who we are now, always looking over our shoulders, always waiting for the next threat? Her voice held exhaustion more than fear. I came west to escape. Found you instead. Built something real. Now that monster wants to take it all away. Nathan had no answer that wouldn't be a lie. He pulled her close, felt their child move between them, a flutter of life against his palm. Until Gerald is caught or dead, we stay vigilant. And if that's never, then we learn to live with it. But we live Sarah. We choose life over fear. Every single day we choose it. She leaned into him, drawing strength from his certainty, even when he felt anything but certain. Outside, snow fell silent and steady, burying the world in white. On December 28th, Marshal Pierce arrived in Red Willow with news that hit like a blacksmith's hammer to the chest. Gerald Ashford was dead. Nathan stood slowly from the forge where he'd been working, not quite believing his ears. What? Dead, very dead. I put 3 bullets in him myself after he shot my deputy in San Francisco. Pierce's face was grim satisfaction mixed with weariness. He wasn't coming here, Cole. He went west, trying to flee the country. We caught him at the docks, boarding a ship to China. The relief was so intense, Nathan's knees buckled. He sat hard on a stool, head in his hands. 7 years of running from Kansas, months of fearing for Sarah, all of it ending in a San Francisco harbor with 3 bullets from a U.S. Marshal's gun. He's really dead, Sarah's voice shook. She'd appeared in the doorway, face pale. Yes, ma'am. Shot him myself. Gerald Ashford will never hurt anyone again. And Henry's serving 15 years. The Kansas victims' families finally got justice. Nathan felt something break inside his chest. Not breaking apart, but breaking open. 7 years of carrying guilt, fear, rage, shame that was never his. All of it releasing at once like steam from heated iron plunged into water. He wept. Actually wept, something he hadn't done since burying Rebecca and Anna. Sarah held him while he shook, while the weight of those years finally lifted. It's over, she whispered against his hair. You're free. We're free. We're free, Nathan repeated, tasting the words. They felt strange, foreign, wonderful. The wedding took place on January 15th, 1879. Simple ceremony because Sarah's pregnancy was obvious now at 5 months, and elaborate celebrations felt false. But simple didn't mean small. The church packed with people who'd watched Sarah arrive in humiliation and Nathan testify in blood, who'd survived winter together, who'd become something more than neighbors through shared hardship. Nathan stood at the altar in a suit that felt foreign, Tom beside him as best man. Mrs. Preston and Ada Thornton had somehow produced flowers in the dead of winter, their scent sweet and impossible. Candles glowed against January gray outside, turning the church into a cave of warmth and light. Sarah walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away because her father was dead and buried in disgrace, and she'd never belonged to anyone but herself anyway. Her ivory dress couldn't hide the swell of pregnancy. She didn't try. Her red hair was pinned up, but gleaming, no longer hidden or apologized for. A crown of fire worn with pride. Nathan's throat closed, watching her approach. This woman who'd stepped off a stagecoach 4 months ago into rejection and humiliation, who'd faced down Henry Ashford's cruelty and Gerald's conspiracy, who'd organized a town's survival and still found time to love a broken blacksmith back to life, who carried his child and somehow still chose him daily. The ceremony blurred. Reverend Clark's words washed over him like water over hot iron, necessary and transforming. He heard himself say, I do, and wondered if his voice sounded as wrecked as he felt. Heard Sarah's clear, strong, I do, and knew she meant it bone deep. I, Nathan, take you, Sarah, to be my wife, to stand beside you in joy and sorrow, to protect our family, to build a life worth living, to never run from what matters, from this day until my last. I, Sarah, take you, Nathan, to be my husband, to share your burdens, to raise our children, to be your partner in all things, to remind you that you're worthy of love, from this day until my last. When Reverend Clark pronounced them married, when Nathan kissed Sarah, as if she were made of spun glass and forged iron simultaneously, the church erupted. People who judged her for red hair now celebrated her marriage to a man they'd learned to respect through trial and winter and blood. The reception at Town Hall brought toasts that made Nathan uncomfortable and grateful in turns. Tom raised his glass first. To Nathan Cole, the stubbornest, bravest, most loyal man I know. He walked 80 miles through a blizzard to save this town. He walked back because Sarah told him to. That's love, folks. Ada Thornton stood next, rare emotion cracking her stern face. To Sarah Cole, who came to this town, rejected and built herself into a woman we all respect. May your marriage be as strong as your spine. Reverend Clark's toast hit deepest. To second chances. To redemption. To the truth that our worst days don't define our best days. Nathan and Sarah, your story gives us all hope. Dancing followed awkward for Nathan, who'd forgotten how in the years of isolation. Sarah didn't care. They swayed more than danced, her head on his shoulder, his hand protective over their child. Did you feel that? Nathan whispered, as movement fluttered against his palm. Our son saying hello. Or daughter. Either way, ours. They left the celebration, early snow falling soft around them, as they walked to the forge that was now their home. Upstairs, Nathan had prepared the bedroom with care. Fresh linens, a fire in the small stove. The iron rose on the bedside table catching firelight. Welcome home, Mrs. Cole, he said softly. Sarah smiled, tired and content in his. I like the sound of that. That night, as they lay together, listening to the forge cool below and the town settle into sleep, Nathan felt something he'd thought lost forever, not just peace, joy. The bone-deep knowledge that he was exactly where he belonged, with exactly who he was meant to be with. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Spring would come, and with it, their child. Life would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. But tonight, beneath Wyoming stars and winter sky, Nathan Cole was home. And home was enough. April brought spring mud and Sarah's labor. Nathan paced outside their bedroom like a caged animal, Tom sitting with him, because brothers didn't let brothers face fear alone. The midday sun painted the forge in harsh light that seemed to mock his helplessness. Last time this happened, they both died, Nathan said for the 5th time in an hour. This isn't Kansas, Tom replied for the 5th time, patience wearing but holding. Sarah's strong. Mrs. Preston knows what she's doing. The baby will be fine. 14 hours of labor. Nathan heard Sarah's cries through the door and nearly broke through it half a dozen times. Tom physically restrained him, twice, hands firm on shoulders that trembled with fear, disguised as fury. Mrs. Preston's calm voice drifted out periodically with updates that did nothing to ease Nathan's terror. Progressing well. She's doing beautifully. Not long now. Each phrase felt like a lie. Time stretched and compressed. Minutes became hours, became eternities. Nathan's mind showed him Kansas. Rebecca's pale face, Anna's tiny coffin, the grave dirt under his fingernails. History repeating, because that's what history did to men who dared to hope. Then a cry, sharp and strong and furious with life. Nathan's world stopped. Mrs. Preston opened the door, smiling in a way that transformed her usually stern face. Mr. Cole, you have a son. Sarah. Tired, healthy, perfect. Go meet your son. Nathan entered on legs that barely held him. Sarah lay exhausted against pillows, hair soaked with sweat. Most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. In her arms, a tiny bundle with a shock of red hair already visible. James Nathan Cole, Sarah said softly, voice hoarse from hours of pushing life into the world. After your father, and you. Nathan approached like approaching something holy. Touched the baby's tiny hand with one scarred finger. James gripped it with surprising strength, and Nathan broke. Sobbing openly, 7 years of grief and guilt releasing in the face of this perfect new life. He's beautiful. You're incredible. We're blessed. This wasn't replacing Anna. This was healing. This was proof that life continued despite loss, that love could survive, devastation, that second chances existed for men who thought they'd used up all their chances. Sarah reached for his face, wiped tears with gentle fingers. He has your eyes, green like sage, and your hair, your fire. Nathan leaned down, kissed her forehead with reverence, usually reserved for prayer. Thank you for him, for us, for everything. We made him together, Sarah whispered. We'll raise him together. That's how this works now. James grew quickly, red hair blazing like his mother's green eyes, like Nathan's personality entirely his own. Loud, demanding, curious about everything. At 3 months, Nathan held him during late-night feedings, singing badly the Irish lullabies his mother had sung. The forge fire glowed below while Nathan rocked his son and felt more alive than he had in years. Fatherhood terrified him daily. Every fever sent him into panic. Every cough brought Kansas nightmares flooding back. Sarah weathered his anxiety with patience that must have cost her, until one night she took his face in her hands and made him listen. "You need to breathe. He's healthy, strong. Look at him." James slept in his cradle chest, rising and falling with perfect rhythm. "But what if something happens?" Nathan's voice cracked on the fear he couldn't shake. "Then we deal with it together." "But Nathan, you can't protect him from everything. You'll drive yourself insane trying. You'll drive me insane watching you try." Her eyes held love and exasperation in equal measure. "He's not Anna. I'm not Rebecca. This is now, not then. You have to let Kansas go." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You do it every day. You choose to be here instead of hiding. Every day you choose us over fear." She kissed him gently. "Keep choosing. That's all any of us can do." The forge expanded as Red Willow grew. Railroad completion in 1880 brought population boom. Miners, ranchers, families seeking fortune or fresh starts or simply space to breathe. Nathan hired 8 workers by summer, then 15 by fall. Sarah managed books while James slept in a cradle near her desk, learning numbers before words. They were building something. Legacy. Future. Things Nathan had thought lost in Kansas soil. In August 1881, Henry Ashford returned. Nathan learned via telegram, first delivered by a writer whose face said the news wasn't good. Henry released on parole after serving 3 years of 15. Model prisoner. Good behavior. The words tasted like ash in Nathan's mouth. Sarah read his face across the breakfast table. "What's happened?" "Henry, he's out. Coming back here." To Red Willow, her hands stilled on the coffee pot. Why would he come back? Where else does he have no family left? No prospects. Gerald's dead. The bank's gone. This is all he knows. Nathan set down the telegram with care, like it might explode. "I don't know what to do." "What do you want to do?" Nathan looked at James playing on a blanket nearby, gurgling at his own toes. "I want to protect my family. But I also—" He paused, searching for honesty. "I don't know if I can forgive him. Don't know if I should try on." "That's not what I asked." Sarah's eyes held that look that meant she already knew his answer, was just waiting for him to find it himself. Henry appeared at the forge 2 days later. Thinner, older, broken in ways that went deeper than prison bars could explain. He stood in the doorway like a man approaching execution, hat literally in hand. "Mr. Cole, may I speak with you?" Nathan set down his hammer, positioned himself between Henry and the office where Sarah worked. Protective instinct that would never fully fade. "Say what you need." "I don't expect forgiveness. Don't deserve it." Henry's voice shook, stripped of the arrogance that had once defined him. "I helped my brother kill people for money. I humiliated your wife publicly. I tried to destroy you. Prison doesn't reform men, Mr. Cole. It breaks them. I'm broken." He met Nathan's eyes directly, and Nathan saw truth there. Not redemption yet, but the raw material it might be forged from. "I've lost everything. Business, reputation, family name. My brother's dead by his own evil. I have nothing. I'm not asking charity, just a chance to work, any work. Mucking stables, hauling coal, anything." His voice dropped lower. "I need to stay here. This is the only place I ever belonged, even when I didn't deserve to belong." Nathan felt Sarah watching from the doorway. Felt the weight of choice pressing down like forge heat. This was the man who would have destroyed her, who'd helped kill Rebecca and Anna by extension through his brother's schemes, who deserved nothing but the judgment he'd earned. But Nathan remembered being broken, remembered needing chances he hadn't earned, remembered 7 years of running from shame that wasn't his until it became his by carrying it. He thought about James in the office. What kind of man did he want his son to see him be? What lessons mattered more than revenge? "I'll give you work. Forge helper. You'll shovel coal, clean tools, do whatever I tell you without question or complaint. Minimum pay. You show up on time and work hard every single day. Can you do that? Henry's eyes widened, hope and disbelief warring on his face. Yes, thank you. Don't thank me. Prove you're worth the chance. Nathan's voice hardened to iron temperature. And Henry, you hurt anyone in this town you even look at, my wife. Wrong, you give me any reason to regret this decision, I'll finish what the law started. We clear. Crystal clear. I swear it, Mr. Cole. You won't regret this. I already regret it, but I'm doing it anyway. Nathan picked up his hammer again, conversation over. Be here tomorrow, 6 a.m. Don't be late. Tom approached after Henry left concern written across his face. You sure about this? No, but mercy is harder than revenge, and I'm tired of choosing easy. Nathan resumed work, hammer striking rhythm that settled his thoughts. I want James to grow up seeing his father choose the hard right over the easy wrong. Can't teach that if I do not live it. He tried to destroy Sarah. I know, believe me, I know. The hammer struck harder, but he's also broken and desperate and looking for a way back. I remember that feeling. If I can help and I don't, what does that make me? Tom was quiet for a moment, then clapped Nathan's shoulder. A better man than most. Hope you were right about him. So do I, brother. So do I. Henry worked silently those first months, head down, taking every dirty job without complaint, shoveling coal in summer heat, cleaning tools covered in rust, hauling scrap metal until his hands bled. Other workers were hostile at first, remembering his crimes. Nathan intervened every time. He's earning his place like everyone else. You got a problem with that, take it up with me. Nobody took it up with Nathan. Slowly, painfully, Henry proved himself through action, not words. Showed unexpected skill with metalwork. An eye for detail Nathan hadn't anticipated. By month 3, Nathan started teaching him advanced techniques, watching redemption happen in real time. It wasn't fast or easy or guaranteed, but it was possible. That mattered. By month 6, Henry saved a young apprentice named Thomas from a falling beam, throwing himself between the boy and 300 pounds of iron without hesitation. His shoulder broke in 2 places. The boy walked away without a scratch. The town noticed. Maybe he's changed. Maybe people can earn second chances. Maybe mercy isn't weakness. When Henry returned to work 6 weeks later, arms still in a sling, Nathan promoted him. Assistant foreman, you've earned it. Henry wept. Actually wept tears cutting clean tracks through forged dust on his face. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just keep being the man you're becoming, not the man you were. Nathan handed him a new hammer balance, perfect handle, worn smooth. This was my father's. He gave it to me before he died. Now I'm giving it to you. Use it well. Henry held the hammer like it was made of gold instead of wood and iron. I won't let you down. I know. That's why I'm giving it to you. The years rolled past like seasons, each bringing its own challenges and joys. Sarah gave birth to Eleanor in March 1882, dark-haired like Nathan, sharp-eyed and fierce from the moment she first cried. Benjamin followed in June 1884, blonde somehow despite both parents having dark or red hair, quiet where his siblings were loud. The forge became an empire through steady work and honest dealing. Nathan opened a second location in Cheyenne in 1883, then a third in Laramie in 1885. 45 employees total by 1886. But Nathan still worked the forge himself most days, hands in iron, remembering where he'd started and refusing to forget. Winter 1884 brought economic depression. Railroads scaled back operations. Mines closed. Banks failed back east, sending shockwaves through the frontier. Unemployment hit 40% in Red Willow. Families who'd built lives on credit suddenly faced foreclosure. Emergency town council meeting. Mayor Thornton grim. The new banker, a man named Stevens from Denver, implacable. $15,000 owed in total across 30 families, or wholesale foreclosures begin within 90 days. Nathan did the math quickly. $15,000 was every dollar he and Sarah had saved. Every penny from the forge's success. Every bit of security they'd built for their children's future. I'll pay it. The room went silent. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. Nathan Sarah started present at the meeting as she was at most important town decisions now. I'll pay the town's debts, all $15,000. Give families 6 months to get back on their feet. No foreclosures. That's your entire savings, Sarah said quietly, voice level, but eyes showing the calculation she'd already done. I know. What if the depression gets worse? What if we can't recover? Nathan looked at her, at the council, at people he'd come to call neighbors and friends and family. At Tom, who'd stood beside him through blizzards and bullets. At Henry, who worked silently in the back row, transformed by second chances. At the faces of men and women who'd chosen community over convenience time and again. Then we start over. We've done it before. We'll do it again if we have to. His voice was steady, decision made before the words even formed. I'd rather our children grow up poor with integrity than wealthy with shame. I can't watch families lose homes when I can prevent it. I won't become the kind of man who has power to help and chooses not to use it. Sarah's eyes filled, but she nodded. Understanding, even if not fully agreeing, trusting even when it hurt. The banker Stevens protested. Mr. Cole, this is highly irregular. The bank needs these debts settled according to... The debts will be settled. By me, tomorrow. Nathan stood, meeting ending, by force of presence. Draw up the paperwork. I'll be in your office at 9 with a bank draft. He walked out before anyone could argue further. Sarah followed. They stood outside in November, cold breath fogging between them. You just gave away everything we built, she said. Not angry, just stating fact. I gave away money. We still have the forge, our home, each other, the children. He pulled her close, felt the solidness of her against him. I couldn't live with myself watching families destroyed when I had the power to stop it. That would make me Gerald Ashford. Just with a different excuse. I know, that's why I didn't fight you in there. She looked up at him, red hair bright even in gray light. Doesn't mean I'm not terrified. Me too. But we'll be fine. We always are. Your optimism is showing. It's very unlike you. I'm learning from my wife. She's stubborn as iron and twice as strong. Flattery won't make $15,000 reappear. No, but it might make you smile. She did smile then, despite everything. I love you, Nathan Cole. I love you, Sarah Cole, and I promise we're going to be fine. The town repaid him over the next 2 years. Not because he never asked, but because people remembered. Remembered the Blizzard expedition. Remembered standing up to the Ashfords. Remembered a man who chose community over self-preservation every single time it mattered. By 1887, he had recovered 12,000 of the 15,000. The other 3 he wrote off as the cost of doing businesses in a community he actually cared about. Some investments paid dividends in dollars. Others paid in knowing you could look your children in the eye without shame. Spring in 1895. Red Willow's 25th anniversary celebration. Nathan was 48 now, gray threading heavy through dark hair, lines deepening around eyes that had seen too much and somehow still found reasons to crinkle with laughter. Sarah, 43, red hair still bright, though silver was creeping in, still beautiful, still fierce, still his. 7 years had passed since that winter of economic depression, and Red Willow had not just survived, but thrived. The railroad ran steady, mines produced silver and copper, 3 churches now instead of 1, a proper school with 2 teachers, a hospital wing attached to Dr. Preston's practice, population approaching 2,000 making Red Willow a real town instead of a frontier settlement. And Nathan's children had grown. James was 16, tall and broad-shouldered, working the forge alongside his father and showing a talent for metalwork that made Nathan's chest tight with pride. Eleanor was 13, fierce and intelligent, already talking about attending university back east, despite Nathan's protests. Benjamin was 11, quiet and observant, always reading, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Mayor Tom Bradley, elected 3 years prior after serving on council for a decade, stood before the gathered town in the community hall they'd built in 1890. The same hall Nathan had contributed lumber and labor for, the same hall that held graduation ceremonies and weddings and funerals, and now this celebration. We gather today to honor 25 years of Red Willow, 25 years of growth and hardship and triumph. But more than that, we honor those who built this town into something worth celebrating. Tom's voice carried easily practice from years of public speaking. Who faced down corruption and winter and economic collapse? Who chose community when isolation was easier? Who taught us all that character matters more than comfort? He called Nathan and Sarah forward. The applause was genuine, warm earned through 17 years of daily choices that added up to a life. Nathan hated speeches, but Tom had insisted. He stood before a crowd that had grown from 250 to nearly 800 present and tried to find words adequate to the moment. I'm not good at this, talking in front of people. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd because everyone knew Nathan Cole spoke rarely but always truthfully. 17 years ago, I watched a woman step off a stagecoach into humiliation. I was a stranger hiding from my past. She was a woman with no future. We were both broken in different ways. He found Sarah's hand, held it like anchor and lifeline combined. What happened next changed both our lives. We built something together. Not just a marriage or family, though we built those too. We built a community where people stand up for each other, where second chances exist, where your past doesn't define your future unless you let it. His voice strengthened, finding the rhythm of forge work, each word a hammer strike against silence. I've learned three things in Red Willow. One, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite fear. Two, community is stronger than individual survival. Three, legacy isn't what you leave behind when you die. It's who you raise to continue after you're gone. He looked at James, Eleanor, and Benjamin in the front row, his children, who would be better than him because he and Sarah had made sure of it. My children will grow up in this town. They'll be better than me, kinder than me, braver than me. They'll build on what we started and make it something we can't yet imagine. That's legacy. That's what matters. He paused, throat tight. Thank you, Red Willow, for giving a broken man a place to heal, for giving my wife a home, for teaching us both that rejection can be redirection to exactly where you belong. The standing ovation embarrassed him, but Sarah squeezed his hand, and he endured it. When it finally quieted, Tom announced one more surprise. Nathan and Sarah Cole have given this town 17 years of service. We'd like to give something back. If you'll all follow us outside. The crowd filed out to the churchyard where something tall stood covered in canvas. Nathan's heart started pounding. He knew that shape. Tom pulled the canvas free, and there it stood. The iron cross Nathan had forged 17 years ago, intending it as his gravestone. 8 feet of black iron, elegant and strong, now mounted on a stone base with an inscription. In memory of Rebecca Coleman and Anna Coleman and all those lost to Gerald Ashford's greed, may their sacrifice remind us justice matters, truth matters, people matter. Forged by Nathan Cole, 1878. Erected by Red Willow, 1895. From ashes and iron we rise. Nathan's voice was quiet but carried in the spring air. I forged this 17 years ago, the day before Sarah arrived. I was going to plant it and disappear. End my life, maybe. But I didn't, because Sarah gave me a reason to stay. He touched the iron warm from afternoon sun, smooth from years in his forge. This cross isn't just for Rebecca and Anna, though I'll never stop missing them. It's for everyone who's lost someone, everyone who's started over, everyone who's chosen to build instead of quit. Iron is forged in fire. So are people. Red Willow forged all of us, and we're stronger for it. Henry Ashford, now a respected foreman and trusted friend, placed a flower at the base. His hands were scarred like Nathan's, now marked by 14 years of honest work. Others followed. Widow Thompson, whose husband died in the blizzard of '78. The Baker family, whose cabin collapsed. Martha Baker, who'd married again, her children grown now. Young and old, longtime residents and newcomers, all leaving tokens of remembrance. Nathan stood with Sarah as the evening fell, their children playing nearby with the ease of young people who'd never known real hardship, the town they had helped build spreading below them. The forge fires glowed in the distance, legacy made visible in iron and stone and human connection. Any regrets? Sarah asked the question she always asked on important days. Only one. That I can't tell that terrified man in Kansas that everything works out. That loss isn't the end. That redemption exists even when you can't see it coming. He wouldn't have believed you. No, had to live it to believe it. Nathan pulled her close, breathing in the scent that still made his heart race after 17 years. What would you tell young Sarah? That rejection isn't failure. It's redirection to where you actually belong. She looked up at him, eyes that had seen him at his worst and loved him anyway. and that sometimes the worst day of your life is the first step toward the best life you could imagine. They walked home together as stars emerged. Inside, warmth waited, James studying metallurgy texts by lamplight, Eleanor reading Shakespeare while Benjamin built intricate structures from wooden blocks. Family purpose, a life built slowly and honestly from ruins and determination. That night, after the children slept, Nathan sat with the iron rose he'd given Sarah on their wedding day. She kept it on the mantle, polished weekly, a reminder of beauty forged from harsh materials. "You know what the best part is?" he asked. "What? I'm not running anymore. From Kansas, from guilt, from fear, from anything." He set down the rose carefully. "I'm right where I belong, with you, with our family, home." Home, Sarah agreed, the word holding 17 years of meaning. That night, Nathan dreamed, but not of Kansas for the first time in 17 years. He dreamed of the forge, of iron glowing white hot, of his hands shaping metal into tools and beauty and purpose, of James working beside him, learning the craft, of Eleanor's fierce intelligence applied to problems he couldn't yet imagine, of Benjamin's quiet observation, missing nothing, planning everything. He dreamed of Sarah's hair, blazing in sunlight, no longer hidden or apologized for, but worn as the crown of fire it had always been. He dreamed of red willow growing and changing and staying fundamentally itself. A place where broken things could be reforged, where shame could become strength, where the worst day of your life didn't have to define all the days that followed. And when he woke before dawn to the familiar darkness, he didn't rise to forge an ending. He rose to forge a beginning. Another day of work, another day of love, another day of choosing to be present instead of hiding. The hammer would strike iron as it always did. Sparks would scatter like stars. The forge fire would paint everything in shades of orange and shadow. But Nathan Cole would be there not as a ghost pretending to be alive, but as a man fully present in the life he'd earned. He'd come to Red Willow to die. Instead, he'd learned to live. And in that learning and that choice made daily for 17 years, he'd built something worth more than gold or glory or the approval of people who'd never understand. He'd built home. The Iron Cross stood in the churchyard memorial and promised both. A reminder that from fire and loss and pain, something beautiful could still emerge. Something lasting. Something forged in fire and tempered by love. Something worth fighting for. Something worth living for. Something called home. And that, Nathan thought as dawn broke over Wyoming, was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.